Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the fifth one of our live panel discussions brought to you by the JeopardyFan.com. Once again, I'm Andy Saunders, and I will be moderating the discussion this evening, and I'd like to introduce our panelists. First up, once again, my co-blogger, Jeannie Kenkel. Hi, Jeannie. We also have David Kendall, archivist and JBoard moderator, returning, and also returning panelist Colby Burnett, Tournament of Champions winner from season 29, and a new panelist, another Tournament of Champions winner, this one from 2004, Russ Schumacher. Welcome, guys, and thank you all for taking part tonight as a recap of what happened in the semifinals and finals of the Battle of the Decades. We had on Monday Ken Jennings defeating Russ as well as Chuck Forrest. Tuesday saw Brad Rutter defeating Leszek Pavlovich and Tom Cubbage. Wednesday had Roger Craig defeating Pam Mueller and Colby. And in the finals, Thursday and Friday, Brad did defeat Ken and Roger. Ken came second, Roger came third. Now, of course, we did have the final of Ken, Brad, and Roger. Could we have had a better final to the tournament than how it turned out? What do you guys think?
That's probably the final that the powers that be wanted. That's kind of the final that everybody expected. What I would have really liked to have seen is having Ken and or Brad being eliminated in the semis or something, and they could very well have if a few clues would have gone either way. That would have been probably even better than the predictable Ken, Brad, whoever final.
I mean, just going off stats and, memorability, you talk about the powers that be. Well, they're the three people who are most well known for playing this game. So, I mean, it was kind of a no-brainer that it was going to be set up that way. They certainly didn't want any two of the three to face off any time before then, and that's completely understandable. So, yeah, I can't think of a better one, at least for the sake of just pure entertainment than what we saw out there. So.
Now, do we think the final could have been any more entertaining than it was? I certainly found it to be quite exciting. Do we think that there was any spot where it might have been could have even been more exciting?
Well, I think it would have been a little more interesting if Roger had been around for the final on the first day, because he knew it. He was the only one of the three to know it, and I was kind of surprised that neither of the other two guys got that final. But if he had been around at the end of that first game, who knows what might have happened? He might have played a bigger role in the whole game ultimately.
Yeah, to be honest, I think I agree with Russ. I am kind of surprised that both Ken and Brad missed that final. For reference, once again, the category for Thursday's final, the Academy Awards, one of the two movies in the last 30 years, one a drama and one a comedy, to win Oscars for Best Actor and Best Actress. Of course, the movies being The Silence of the Lambs and As Good as It Gets. Now, of the 6 semifinalists who lost, who do we think had the best chance of being a finalist?
Any one of them?
Well, I think in Colby, in your game, you and Pam and Roger, I mean, really any of you three could have won that game. If one or two things goes a little bit differently.
Yeah, so, I mean, so the game that I played with Roger and Pam, that was the most wide open, and yes, it pretty much all came down to final. If any one of us would have gotten it, we would have been in. And, Brad's game was, pretty much a runaway. And a few clues go in favor of Chuck or, in favor of Russ. They're right in there with it with Ken. So, I mean, I would go in that order.
That's nice of you to say, but I don't think I was going to win that game. Chuck certainly was right there, though. He made a heck of a comeback there.
Oh, I mean, yeah, he was absolutely on fire in that last, third of, Double Jeopardy. So,
when I was talking earlier about it would have been a nice game if Ken and or Brad had been eliminated. That's definitely what I was thinking of because it came so close for Ken to be eliminated there, and we could have seen like a Chuck, Colby, somebody else game.
Fair enough. Now I know Russ mentioned this a little bit to him, his feeling that he didn't really have much of a chance, I guess, compared to Ken or Chuck. But I'm kind of curious because you're the first person who's played Ken who's been on the panel. What's it like playing Ken?
He was so good on the buzzer, and I think that is, that was really tough to beat. And he showed that, of course, throughout his whole. You don't win 74 games without being really good on the buzzer. Of course, you don't win that many games without knowing a whole lot of stuff too. But I don't know what it was because in my original run of shows and even throughout most of this tournament, I had pretty good timing on the buzzer, and when I was trying to get in, I was getting in, a good majority of the time. But against Ken, it just wasn't happening. But I think on the other hand, I think Ken and me probably have a similar sort of knowledge base, or we overlap a whole lot. Whereas I think Ken and Chuck had pretty different stuff that is kind of their wheelhouse, and so I think that's why that game got really entertaining because there's so much stuff that Chuck knows that Ken doesn't know, and vice versa. And so I don't think they were fighting for the buzzer all that much. It was just kind of the material got divided such that in the double Jeopardy round they were each kind of taking their own stuff and hitting or missing the daily doubles, as it were, and it turned into a really entertaining game. But yeah, when I was trying to beat Ken in on the buzzer, it maybe happened like twice in the course of the whole game. It was just really tough.
Hey, Watson couldn't even beat Ken at a time or two.
And I'm not sure what it is that Ken and Brad do differently than any of the rest of us. I mean, we all had a lot of success on the buzzer over the course of our games, or we wouldn't have, made it as far as we did. But there's something about those two guys that they hit it at just the right time.
I think that if their secret was more well known, I think we'd have or at least they wouldn't be as good as they were. So
yeah.
Maybe if we get them on the panel at some point, not that I'm saying that's very likely, maybe
we can try. I've never asked him.
Yes, maybe you can work on getting Brad on the panel, Jeannie. That would
Brad?
be nice.
I can try.
Okay, well, it's worth a shot.
You can.
Yeah.
You can.
Well, the weird thing with Brad and the buzzer is that his motion is like really violent, and like there's a lot of motion going on. Like he kind of starts out up at his chest and then buzzes like down towards his waist, and it seems like that it would be really hard to get consistent timing with that sort of thing. Whereas Ken or me or lots of other people, it's more you try to sort of stay as stable as possible so you can hit the buzzer. I don't know.
Russ?
What's that?
Did you use your thumb to ring in?
Yeah, I used my thumb.
Yeah.
What about you, Colby? I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I mean, it's pretty much standard, though I had this, little trick that I believed worked until I faced Roger. And it was just so I have, so part of the thing is, I, do a lot of upkeep on my fingernails, so they're relatively long, especially for a guy. And so, I always, depress the darn thing a little bit with that and then press, after that using my thumb. And it worked for the first, 8 matches. And then, I'm just looking at the stats, and it's just, of Ken and Roger and Brad, they got in more, 5 or 6 more buzzes over the halfway point. So they're in, 55 to 60% of the time first, and it's just, it's really difficult to come back from that if you can outbuzz the other 2 people repeatedly. Yeah. So.
Well, and especially when you know as much stuff as they do, then.
Yeah. And really, what kept me alive in that game was that Roger was going in, was focusing so much on buzzing in. There was stuff that he didn't know, and they kind of he dug a hole there. So, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So moving on to, I guess, the second half of the final, there were a couple of surprises, I would say, that definitely affected both Rogers and Ken's chances of winning. What would the panel say the bigger surprise was? Either Rogers' miss on the daily double in the lakes and rivers category, sharing the name of a city. It's the largest lake entirely within a Canadian province. And Roger said Lake Manitoba instead of Lake Winnipeg. Or Ken's miss on that fateful final Jeopardy Secretaries of State. Serving 160 years apart, these two Secretaries of State are the only ones who never married. The answer, or the response being who are Condoleezza Rice and James Buchanan, Ken going for Buchanan, and Madeleine Albright. What would you guys say the bigger surprise was? The Daily Double miss from Roger or the Final Jeopardy miss from Ken?
I think the Final Jeopardy miss from Ken was a bigger surprise, personally. But I don't know. Did you and David? You must have known the correct answer to the Canada clue.
Well, I was going to say I thought both of them were easy, but then my two big strong wheelhouses are geography and history. So there you go. And I think it more depends on where your wheelhouses are. If you're not strong in geography and history, and I don't know if I know Ken's really strong in geography, but that was Roger's question, not Ken's. But it all depends on where your wheelhouses lie, I guess. I suppose of the two bigger surprise, maybe it was Roger because, first of all, I don't think he got any of his true daily doubles at all, which I guess was the biggest surprise for me.
Yeah.
So going in like that, and then kind of missing with, he knew that it was a province by his reaction. Oh right, yeah, Winnipeg because it's a city and a province. And I guess that was the biggest surprise of me of the two, but it just all depends on where your knowledge lies. Both of them were easy for me, but maybe they just happened to find both of their Achilles heels.
Colby and Russ, what do you guys think?
Well, I think that like what we saw was a potentially 950 grand brain fart, and those things happen, and it's happened to happen at such a crucial moment. And I would say that in terms of knowledge base, I wasn't shocked that Roger brain farted because that just happens. Like, he's an amazing player, but that happens. That's happened before, and it's happened in my game. I've seen it happen in other games. But Ken overthinking and going with Albright over Rice was like, especially when Brad effectively said, this isn't my wheelhouse, and I think this is going to be a lot tougher than it's going to be knowing the category. That's because this is it. And he basically offered the game to Ken, and Ken couldn't take it. That was more shocking to me.
Did you know both those answers, Colby?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
That was not fun being up there.
Did you know those, Russ?
No, I would have missed that final, the second final. I would have got the movie final, the Thursday movie final, right? But I wouldn't have gotten the Rice and Buchanan one. I did know Lake Winnipeg though.
Okay.
Yay!
Yeah, I mean they both were. I guess both of those things were pretty surprising to me. I guess just the odds of Roger missing two true daily doubles like in back-to-back games is just had to be incredibly small. And then,
but the odds of Roger calling true daily double are incredibly high.
Well, that's true. But for Ken to miss that final, that was pretty surprising too. And I think you could hear it in the audience in that little video they made of everyone kind of gasping when that happened at the end.
Yeah.
For the record, because everyone else said, I knew Thursday's final. I did not get Friday's final. However, I did I did obviously know the Daily Devil in Lakes and Rivers, but that's also because I'm Canadian. That had a lot to do with it. Now, assuming that Jeopardy does have another tournament, I mean, I guess we all figured the Ultimate Tournament would be the last one, and then they had the Battle of the Decades. So obviously, I think they're gonna have another big tournament at some point, maybe just before Alex retires. Will anyone ever beat Brad? And if so, who do we think has the best shot?
Mm.
That's such a tough question. And after it was all said and done, because like, I'll be frank, before I set foot on that stage, I wouldn't have recognized. I was a very intermittent fan of Jeopardy, so I missed all of Brad's, like, well, I guess say original run, but he had several, but I never paid attention to any of them. But there were moments where he's had incredible gets in order to win the tournaments that he's won. There have been times when people have had him beat, and they just, basically, fall out in front of him. I mean, he's beatable, but I think he's still the best player they've ever seen. And anything could happen on any given day, any given bullet. But yeah, the odds are the odds-on favorite to see Alex out into retirement unbeaten. I mean, I wouldn't put money on it, but I mean, he's faced just about everybody that he could face in terms of knowledge base and buzzer speed.
Don't forget how close Mike DuPay came in the 90s game.
But once again, you think about the situation where if he kind of mumbled an answer, or he didn't really mumble, like he said something that wasn't quite right and got a chance to say it again, and then it was.
Yeah,
and
if
that never happened, if he didn't get credit for that, then we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah. It was that close.
I mean,
it proves that he is beatable, but he hasn't been beaten.
Yes, and likewise, I mean, from the Ultimate Tournament, like if Michael Rooney hadn't have turfed his wager, if Leslie hadn't have bet zero in the $1 Million Masters, again, we don't have this discussion. So there have been many times when he's been down and he's managed to pull it out, but yeah, he's still somehow managed to pull it out. And yes, he's never lost to a human, and I think that really is the most impressive part about him, is that he has managed to make these great escapes so many times.
I guess I'm kind of betraying like my comics, nerd background here, but like if you read Marvel, if you read like X-Men, and like there's a character named Longshot, and basically Longshot's deal is his mutant powers is just that things go his way. Brad Rudder's mutant power is that things go his way repeatedly. And I can't quite put my, it's just like, hey, you know what? Michael Jordan is an amazing basketball player. You know what? His teams lost hundreds of games. And, like, similarly, like, there are spots where even if he's the best, somebody should have taken him down, and it hasn't happened. So
maybe they'll just have a tournament. We're gonna play this thing until somebody beats Brad Butter tournament.
That might happen once Alex retires and they let Brad back on the show as a regular contestant. But that might be an interesting thing to watch.
Yeah.
So
but, like,
I wonder if Brad worries about playing again, like if he wants to keep his streak alive, like being unbeaten. I wonder if he ever hesitates to play again,
But I'd say that Brad, like, and I didn't, I wasn't really close to him or really like sat down and talked to him, but like that was definitely the vibe. It's just like, oh, so this is how I'm spending like the next few days, and then I'm gonna go back home and do what it is that I enjoy doing. Like, I won't say that he was like nonchalant, but it's just like, oh, this is the thing I'm going to do right now, and then I'm going to go back to work. Like, it's and it's great. It's like, oh,
Like,
I'm going to leave. I'm going to drive home from the
nervous.
hotel. It'll be great.
Yeah, Ken seemed more nervous about the whole tournament definitely than Brad did. Yeah, that was exactly the same vibe I got. That Brad was just kind of like, yeah, I just made this TV pilot, and so now I'm doing my other TV show, which is Jeopardy.
There was definitely but whatever happens,
Yeah.
like, vibe from Brad Rudders. Like, he's got absolutely nothing to prove, and he's had, like, I'm just going to have a good time. I'm going to play my game. And, yeah, like, Ken was, I won't say rattled, but definitely a lot more focused on the game than Brad was. And it was very interesting to watch them play off each other.
So I guess we can move on to season 31 now, and if anyone's watching live, then I think it's aired everywhere in the United States, so I don't really have to worry about spoilers too much. So if you've seen the episode, you know that Alex's mustache has returned, and the Jeopardy staff has decided to ask on Facebook and Twitter whether Alex should keep his mustache. So what do you guys think? Do you think he should keep it, or do you think he should shave it? On this panel, I think I'm going to be in the minority by saying that I kind of like it. I think it looks good on him, so have at me.
Yeah, you're also the only one on the panel with a mustache, so that might have something to do with it.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm kind of against the mustache, but I'm more against having the Facebook and Twitter thing. I understand why they're doing that and why a lot of people do that now. It's a social media thing. This is the 2010s, and that's what they do, and it's a popularity contest. That part of it I don't really like, and maybe it's just because the mustache really looked good in the 80s because, as mentioned this before, it's an 80s fashion, and he had a really swell 80s mustache. And the fashion nowadays in the 2010s is not really mustachy. Just like mullets aren't in anymore, and perms aren't in anymore, and mustaches really aren't in anymore. He shaved it at the right time, in my opinion.
Okay, so what do the rest of you think?
I haven't watched the tonight's show yet on the DVR. So in general, I'm pro mustache, but I haven't seen what this one looks like yet. So I have to wait and see.
They've had a few pictures on Facebook and television ads.
So are those representative? I saw the picture on Facebook, but I wasn't sure if that was like the real deal or if that was just like a.
Yeah, it pretty much looked like that.
Okay. Yeah, it was kind of. It didn't look quite as good as it used to in those pictures.
I know I would vote no mustache. In fact, I think I'm going to do that sometime. Use the hashtag.
Meanwhile, I think I just got followed by an account called Alex Trebek's Razor on Twitter, as we're having this discussion.
Wow.
Because there's Alex's mustache also.
Yes.
That followed last week.
I checked that Twitter account out. That's kind of cool.
Colby, what are your thoughts on the mustache?
I'm just going to have to agree with the putting, a person of Alex Trebek's stature, as as iconic as his facial hair with or without has been, and his hosting of the show, to have it come down to social media, it seems almost ridiculous. It's just that, of all things, you would assume that he is in control of his facial hair, and also, I will say it doesn't look as nearly as full now as it did. Granted, he has less time.
It's not the glorious 80s dash.
Yeah. And I'm certain that, given time, it could, reach its former glory. But, hey, he's on that road. And, and it's a lot of upkeep, just in general. So, I mean, I wish him well. But like, if it's not his decision, it just seems silly, and I don't want to comment on it any further.
It's almost like a vote yes or the mustache gets it.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And one more thing I was thinking about, actually, with regards to season 31, and has to do with, I guess you could say, a competitor of ours here at the Jeopardy Fan. And do we think there's going to be better betting strategy from contestants this season, and or more betting for the tie by leaders because of the all the publicity that Keith has received regarding his The Final Wager YouTube channel, which is now entering its second season? Do we think that there's going to be a better strategy we'll be seeing thanks to Keith?
Goodness, I hope so. I'm not a wagering person in the least. I've mentioned this before. Wagering goes right over my head, but I recognize hanging out on J-board and things like that the general discussion among fans is that people really need to know how to wager more, and Keith really filled a good niche in that. I wish him all the success in getting the word out there about wagering.
Yeah, that's kind of my feeling too. Is I hope it makes a difference, but I'm not convinced that it will. It surprises me that there are, that the number of people who go on the show sort of with the attitude that, well, there's nothing else I can learn, and I'm just going to go on the Jeopardy with what I've got. It surprises me how many people there are kind of with that attitude that do that. I mean, I'm sure there's a variety of levels at which people kind of can study and do well with that, but wagering seems like one of those things where you can at least learn the basics. I mean, there's really no need for the average contestant to know like the difference between a 3/4 and a 7/8 situation or something like that, but at least knowing the basics is something you should figure out before you go on there.
Yeah, I at least know the basics, but yeah, those other wagering strategies. Yeah.
I know that I think this, what you just said, Russ, I can take back to something that Brandon Saunders from the million-second quiz, he mentioned during one of the teen tournament hangouts we had back in July, that Jeopardy wagering strategy at its core probably takes about 2 hours to study and learn. And so really anyone that hasn't done so is kind of doing a very large disservice to themselves. That being said, I think I can speak for myself as someone who's yet to be on the show, and I think David may harbor this silent hope as well, that if I happen to get on the show, I hope my opponents have absolutely no idea how to wager.
Yeah.
But
everybody, I think, hopes that.
That would be something I would like to see. But, I mean, again, with Keith out there, I'm holding out less hope that will happen.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think it's good that what he does, it focuses on things that haven't been focused on as much, and I think that it will see more betting to the tie from leaders, because I know he's a very large proponent of that, as well as better strategy in general. Now, because you are a first-time panelist with us, Russ, and I think I've asked this of all of our first-time panelists. Since you've been on the show, what kind of stuff have you been up to?
So lots of work, I guess. I teach and do research at Colorado State University, and semester, I guess we're in our 4th week of the semester now, so things are back in full swing with that, and so keep busy with that, and that's kind of what I was doing while finishing my PhD in atmospheric science, and then getting a job and all that kind of in between when I was last on the show. 10 years ago or so, and you know, until this Decades tournament came up, which I assumed after the Ultimate tournament that I was done. You know, there was really no circumstance that I was going to come back on the show that I could envision, but I'm really happy that they made another tournament and let me be a part of it, and that I didn't embarrass myself this time around.
We were happy to see you on there too, Russ. Do people ever ask you about Jeopardy, like at the college there?
So it's kind of weird, like probably before this time, like before the Decades tournament, I probably got recognized by random strangers like 3 or 4 times ever, and not even when it was on the first time in May, but like when it was airing in reruns the last couple weeks, like I've had more people recognize me in the last like 2 weeks than like ever before about Jeopardy. I'm not sure why that is, but anyway, it was kind of random. But yeah, my students tend to find out about it one way or the other. This time I brought it up because it was you know, it was happening and they could watch it like in real time or whatever. But normally it just, you know, but it's not that hard to discover that if you Google me or whatever.
They say, hey, we're in Professor Jeopardy's class.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're just about done for time for tonight. I'd like to once again thank all of our panelists, Russ, Jeannie, David, and Colby. Once again, I am Andy Saunders. Our next live panel will be taking place next Monday night, where the main topic of discussion will be Week 1 of Season 31 of Jeopardy! We've already got a couple of contestants from this coming week lined up, so you'll want to see that and see which contestants we get. So once again, for Jeannie Kenkel and all of our panelists, I'm Andy Saunders. Thank you for tuning in, and have a great night.